Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to another live community classroom with Michaels and happy I Love Yarn Week. We have our friend Marley Bird with us today, and she's going to be teaching us crochet for absolute beginners. My name is Renee L. from Yarn Inspirations, and I'll be helping with any questions you might have during today's class. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we'll make sure that Marley answers them. While we're getting ready to kick things off, let us know where you're watching from. And if you already told us that, let us know if this is your first time crocheting ever. Over to you, Marley.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. As Renee and Felicia said, my name is Marley Bird. I am a knitter and a crocheter, so I like to call myself bi crafty. But crochet was my very first love, and I learned to crochet from my grandmother. Now, we're going to start off here, and I'm going to show you the basics of crochet. But before we jump in, we all have to promise each other something here. You ready? And this is something that my grandmother made me promise when I first started. We have to remember that this is something brand new to us. We've probably never held a hook, never held yarn, never tried to manipulate it. So we have to remember to give ourselves some grace. It might not be that you are able to crochet very well today, but if you keep with it, keep practicing, keep coming back to this video and watching what I teach you over the next hour again and again, you will become a crocheter. But don't get overly frustrated with yourself. Just remember you're learning something brand new. So just promise me that you're going to give yourself some grace. Everybody, deal? Sound like a deal? Pinky swear? All right. I see all of you out there. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you. All right. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is we're going to jump in with some yarn. So I have some yarn here that's called Red Heart Super Saver. This one is particularly the granny square yarn. We're just going to use it as just basic yarn because that's what it is. And what I mean by that is this is what is considered worsted weight yarn. It is called a size 4 yarn. It's a very standard basic size yarn that you would use for blankets, hats, scarves, baby items, whatever you want. You can go with yarn that's larger or smaller, but this is genuinely one of the first go-to yarns a lot of beginners start with. I started with Red Heart Super Saver yarn. So this is a good yarn to start with. And it is available at Michael's. This particular yarn is available at Michael's online, so you can get it online. I only chose this one because I liked the colors. I thought it'd be great for you to see different colors as we're going through the different stitches. As far as your hook, in your pattern instructions, it did suggest a size L hook, which is a pretty big size hook. And generally, it's a lot larger than what I would use with this size yarn. But I think that it was recommended so that way you guys could have larger stitches for your chains to kind of try and see your stitches. But typically for a Red Heart Super Saver yarn, you would use what is an eye hook or a 5.5 millimeter hook. You can see here in that red, that's the size. So if you look at the size difference here, can you see how the silver is so much bigger than the red? And that's important because the size of your hook is going to determine the size of your stitches, which as you start to follow patterns and you want your project to come out the same size as your pattern, you need your stitches to be the same size that is written in the pattern. And that is achieved by the different size hooks. Okay, so this is a Susan Bates hook. It just happens to have a nice big handle on it because it's easy for me to hold that. This is also a Susan Bates hook, and the great thing about this is it comes with a bunch of different hook sizes that you pinch in here and it locks into place, and so you have a good handle here as well. Okay, so when it comes to hook size, that's something you're going to look for is what is the hook size recommended for your pattern, or you can always look on your label. So let's go ahead. We're going to take a look down here and we're going to take a look at our label. So as you come to your yarn label, one thing that's awesome is there's something called the Craft Yarn Council. And several years ago, they standardized how different yarns were presented here in the US. And so you can see right here in this square, it says medium, and then it has the number 4 right there. That is an indication that this is a worsted weight yarn. If it was a number 5, that would be a bulky yarn. If it was a number 3, that would be a DK or sport weight yarn. Okay, so the number here, the smaller the number, the smaller the size of the yarn, the bigger the number, the bigger the size of the yarn. I'm going to skip over all of this right here. You can look at those details. It's like how to wash, don't apply an iron, don't dry clean. You can pop it in the dryer. But right here, can you see where that looks like a crochet hook? That crochet hook right underneath it where it says a US, and then it has what looks like a number 1-9. It actually is an I-9. And that is this size hook here. And so it's recommending this size hook for this yarn. So if you're ever in doubt, what size hook should I use? This is a great place to start. Now, this does not mean you can only use an eye hook. That does not mean that. You can use whatever hook you want to use. This is just a good place to start. And so the guide here is that if you used an eye hook and you did 12 single crochets, it would measure 4 inches across. And if you did those 12 single crochets for 15 rows, you'd get 4 inches tall. That's the idea there. Okay, so this is just a helpful place for you to begin when you start choosing different yarns as you're at the store. If you go into knitting so that you can be by crafty like me, sort of the same thing applies over here. There's knitted needles, and it recommends a US size 8 or a 5mm. Okay, it also gives you the size of granny square because this is granny square all in one yarn. All right, but that's what this information is for when you're looking at a particular label and trying to choose what size hook. Okay, everybody with me so far? Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, perfect. Okay, I know that this is like tedious information, but it's important information because you might not know it. When you're taking your yarn from your skein, this is a skein of yarn, you can pull it out from the middle here. You can just kind of stick your finger in, try and find an edge and pull out, and you might get out a big blob. Totally fine. Those are like the guts of the skein. Or you can take your label off completely and you can find the end of the yarn on the outside and you can pull it out here. Now, the pros and cons, if you pull it out here, it's really easy to find this end, right? But now your yarn is going to be turning the whole time you're using it. Pros and cons of pulling it from the middle is that when you go in to put your finger in here to try and find the end for the middle to pull out, you could pull out a bunch of guts, which is kind of like a pain in the rear, but you're going to use those. So it's not that big of a deal. And then as you continue, your yarn just pulls really nice and neat from the inside of your skein. So you can choose either one and how to get your ball or how to get your yarn that you want to use. Either one doesn't matter. If you just want to pull from the outside for the lesson today, just until you get used to it, then you can cut it off and try and find the inside, you could do that too. Okay. All right. Once you get your strand of yarn out, so go ahead, decide where your strand of yarn is, get that out. And we are going to start off with what is called a slip knot. Okay, so I'm going to write that down, a slip knot. Now, the slip knot is what we are going to put onto our hook so that way we can start making chains through it. The most important part about the slip knot, as it's on our hook, the slip knot is not going to count as a stitch when it's on our hook, but once we yarn over and pull through and it becomes a chain, it is a stitch. All right. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to write something here in just a second, but for a slip knot, take the end of your yarn, and we always want to leave ourselves about 4 inches of a tail. Okay. Don't leave a tail that's like this long because you'll never be able to weave that in properly. Always leave yourself a nice long tail. And here's the best way I know how to explain how to do a slip knot. You're going to put that tail in the palm of your hand. And then I'm going to like hold it here with my thumb. Take this yarn. This is our working yarn. I'm going to wrap it up and over top of my forefinger and back down. And then I'm going to come back up and then cross over. Okay. So here we are. It's in the palm of my hand. Bring my yarn up and over my forefinger, come back down. When I come back up, I cross over. Okay, so now I have this cross. I'm going to rotate my hand. So this is the yarn I was pulling around, right? I can go underneath this first loop that I did, grab that second loop, pull them out of my fingers, and I have a slip knot. All right, we're going to do it again. tail in the palm of my hand. Working yarn, I'm going to wrap it around my forefinger and middle finger and back up. Then I cross it over, rotate my hand underneath the front loop, grab that back loop, and then as you take them off of your fingers, you're going to get a slip knot. I'll show you one more time. Palm of my hand, working yarn. Working yarn goes around my forefinger and middle finger, come back up, cross over, rotate. Then I use my pinky to kind of hold that. Go underneath this front one, grab the back one, pull my fingers out, and give me a pull. And I have a loop right here. You'll see that that loop, you can adjust the size by separating the tail and the working yarn. See how I'm pulling them apart? And the loop just goes away. All right. So once you do your slip knot, we're going to place that on our hook. So take your hook and put it right into that loop and then pull the two legs apart so that it becomes a little bit snug around this barrel part of the hook. Don't make it down here on the throat section where it's tilted. You want it down here on the thicker part of the hook. Okay? All right. This is the part where a lot of beginners struggle because you're trying to find out how do you hold this yarn to accomplish this next step. And I'm going to tell you right now, the way you're going to hold your yarn right now might not be the way you're going to hold it later. You're going to find a way that is comfortable for you. So here at the start, let's just play around to get a good feel of how to do this, okay? First off, I hold my hook like a pencil. You guys can see this. I'm holding my hook like a pencil. You can hold your hook like a knife. Either way works. You choose which one is best for you, either like a knife or like a pencil. My grandmother taught me like a pencil, and that's why it's easier. It's usually whatever you start with is what you do. So I'm going to hold mine like a pencil. I always recommend that's a good place to start because so many of you have been in school or have held a pencil or a pen. So this is something that should be comfortable to you, is holding it like a pencil. Over here, this yarn, with your opposite hand, you just grab it and kind of just give yourself some tension with it, okay? You just want to have a little bit of tension with it. And what we're going to do, I'm going to hold my hook like this. You can see, I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to go from, like, if this is back, I'm going to go back over top of my hook back towards me. And I'm just going to hold this tension, okay? Now my slip knot, you see my slip knot right there? I'm going to grab my slip knot. So if you can see here, I have a hold of my yarn down here and I'm grabbing my slip knot just to give myself some tension here. Okay. Everybody with me so far? Now what I'm going to do is with my right hand that I'm holding this, I'm going to use that hook just like a hook. I'm going to grab the yarn I wrapped around and I'm going to pull it through that loop that was on my hook. And because I'm grasping it down here with my thumb and forefinger, it gives me the stability to be able to pull that through. Okay. Once you've done that, you can tighten your yarn back up to the size of your hook. Again, do not tighten your yarn down here. You always want it to be up here at the barrel of your hook. And then we're going to do it again. So hold your yarn. I like to wrap my yarn around my pinky. I'll just, for future reference, you guys can see this as you come back and watch. I will grab my yarn with my pinky and wrap it around. And then I tuck my fingers underneath. And then it's that point I grab my chain like this. So I use my forefinger here as sort of like a lever. You probably won't be able to do that here at the start, you guys, but as you come back and rewatch this, you can try that. All right. So here we are. I'm grabbing my chain to give me some stability. I'm going to take my yarn. I'm going to go up from behind, over top, back round towards the front. So now I've wrapped my hook. Now I'm going to pull my hook through the loop that's on my hook. So I bring it. I like to turn my hook so so instead of looking it towards me, it's like pointed down. And if you look at the loop on your hook, it looks like kind of like a teardrop. So as you pull that hook through down at the bottom of the teardrop, it doesn't tend to snag on anything. All right, I'm going to show you guys again. Wrap my yarn around. I turn my hook so that the hook portion is towards the bottom of the teardrop, and I pull it through. Okay. And then I adjust where I'm holding my chain here. I adjust, I move up, and I start again. So this is called a yarn over. I yarn over my hook, and then I pull that yarn over through the loop on my hook. Yarn over my hook, pull the yarn over through the loop on my hook. Yarn over my hook, pull that yarn over through the loop on my hook. Yarn over my hook, pull through the loop on my hook. I want you guys to keep doing that, okay? I want you to get 10 of them, and then I want you to rip it out. Whoop! Ha! We're going to do it again. So those of you who are still stuck on the slip knot, no worries. We're going to do it again here. Put the tail of your yarn in the palm of your hand. Working yarn goes around the forefinger and your middle finger. And when you come back up, you cross over. Rotate your hand. We're going to go underneath this front one, grab that back one, and pull it off. So now we have a slip knot. Put that slip knot on your hook. Find a way to hold tension with your yarn in, for me, it's my left hand. And then I like to grasp the knot of the slip knot so that I now have some tension. If you're holding it like a knife, you're going to hold it just like so. If you're holding it like a pencil, you're going to hold it like so. It's at this point we go back to what we're going to do for the entire time you're crocheting. You yarn over your hook. So you go from back to front and then pull that yarn over through the loop on your hook. And what you just created is one chain. Yarn over your hook, pull through the loop on your hook. Yarn over your hook, pull through the loop on your hook. Yarn over your hook, pull through the loop on your hook. Now, I know I make this look easy, but I want to remind you guys, this is something brand new for your hands and your eyes and your brain. So you guys are intelligent people out there, and you can very clearly see what I'm doing, and you can hear and understand what I'm saying. But you can look at your hands and be like, why won't you do what she's telling you to do? And it's perfectly normal that they are doing something on their own, because you need to create those neural pathways so that way your brain can talk to your hands and tell it what to do. So that's where the practice is just going to come in handy. You can see here, I'm literally just pulling a loop. So I pull my yarn over through the loop, yarn over through the loop, yarn over through the loop. You guys see that? Can you see how I'm getting some nice, it looks like a V. All those stitches look like V's. Yeah. Once you get 11 V's, I want you to stop, because that's where we're going to go to the next part. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to do 11. Palm of my hand, working yarn over my forefinger and middle finger, come back up, cross over, rotate my hand. You can even use your hook to go underneath the front loop, grab your back loop and pull it off. So now it's on your hook. Make it snug around the barrel of your hook. And then I want you to get 11 chains. So yarn over, pull through. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Everybody with me so far? Okay, it's usually at this point you guys are really still trying to do the slip knot and the chain, and that's totally fine. I'm going to continue on and I'm going to show you how to do a single crochet. If you just want to practice your slip knot and your chains right now during this video and listen to me doing the single crochet and then come back and try and do it with me later, that is perfectly fine. And I highly recommend that if you're struggling along with this part. Just practice this part. This is an important step, okay? So, and just know that the information is going to be here for you. All right, everybody with me on that? Okay. We are going to do 10 single crochets into 10 of these chains. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, Marley, you just said to do 11. Why am I only going to do it into 10? And I'm going to explain to you why now. And I think this is important, okay? So we did, let's write this over here. We did 11 chains, okay? We did 11 chains. So if a symbol for the chain is like an oval, let's make those, okay? So we're going to do let me do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to put the 11th one right there. Okay. So I have 11 chains. What a pattern will tell you to do when you are working along is it'll say chain 11 and then it will say single crochet in second chain from hook. So I'm going to say single, single. Can you guys see that green? Crochet. So SC is single crochet in second chain, CH is chain from hook. HK is hook. Okay. Single crochet in second chain from hook. Well, the loop on your hook does not count as a stitch. Ever, 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 and forever, if you ever come across a pattern where a designer tells you to count it as a stitch, put that pattern away. It's not a good pattern. It does not count as a stitch. Repeat after me, everybody. Look at me. The loop on my hook does not count as a stitch. The loop on my hook does not count as a stitch. So when we are counting the second stitch from hook, we do not count the loop on our hook. You look at these like V type shapes right here. That V is the top of one chain. So that is the first chain from hook. This second V is your second chain from hook. So this first one you will skip and we will put our very first stitch in the second one. What that means is this first stitch here that we're skipping, it's like a stair step. Because as you are crocheting, as you turn your work to work back the next row, we have to create our stitches over here with a stair step so that way we can get the correct height of our stitches on the next row. So that 11th stitch, which is the skip chain, we are not going to work into it because it is our stair step. So that way, when we do a single crochet into the next chain, it will be the right height as we're coming back. So we'll do a single crochet in the second chain from hook and in each chain all the way to the end. All right. So as you're working, it'll look like this. This chain out here does not count as a stitch. It's just a stair step out there. Okay. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to write the single crochet. Okay. So SC is single crochet and that equals the plus sign when it comes to symbols. Okay. You with me so far? All right. This might seem like it's a lot so far, but I promise you, as you start moving on in your career, you'll be like, oh, I understand what's going on. All right. So here we are. This is the chain we're going to skip and we're going to work back along our chain going this direction. So what I like to do is I hold my work in my left hand. I kind of give myself security with it. And then here's what we're going to do. Take your hook here, go into the second chain, and I'm just going to have you grab, see how that's that loop up there? We're going to grab that top loop. We're going to go into it. We yarn over our hook, just like we did when we were doing our chains. And then we're going to pull that yarn over just through the chain that we just went into. So you yarned over and you're pulling it up just through that chain. So now you have 2 loops on your hook. Now that you have 2 loops on your hook, we're going to finish this stitch. So we yarn over just like we did when we did the chain. And now, see how I'm holding? I use my fingers to hold the bottom of the 2 chains to give myself stability. I'm going to pull that yarn over through both of those loops. Ta-da! And you just completed a single crochet. That's your very first stitch, you guys. If you have these stitch markers with you, it looks like a safety pin. What I want you to do is, if you're looking behind the loop on your hook, which does it count as a stitch? No, that's right. The loop on your hook does not count as a stitch. But can you see behind it? It looks like a V right there. That is the top of your single crochet you just made. So if you have one of these stitch markers, if you put it into that V, just like so, just to like mark it, that lets you know that that is going to be the very last stitch of your row when you come back. So you'll never wonder where that last stitch is. Okay? All right, here we go. We're going to go back to our chains. We worked into this chain. So now we go to the next one over, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to make a single crochet. Go into the back loop, yarn over, pull through that back loop. All right, so now we have 2 loops on our hook. Yarn over your hook and pull through both of those loops on your hook. You can see you created another single crochet. We're going to do this all the way down. So go as slow as you want. Go into the chain, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop. That's what that's called, is pulling up a loop. So you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over your hook, pull through both of those loops. Can you see how the motion is very similar to how you created the chains? You're just connecting it to something that you've already have established here. So you're going in, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop. 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through 2. I'm going to keep talking you through this as I go down. Into the chain, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, and draw through 2. Into the chain, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, draw through 2. If you find your hook is snagging into the 2 loops that you're pulling through, make sure you turn it so that the hook part is going through the chains at the bottom portion, like down here. Okay? All right, go into the next chain, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over your hook, pull through 2. Go to the next chain, insert it, insert your hook, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over your hook, pull through 2 loops. Into the next chain, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over your hook, draw through 2. I'm on my last one here. I go into my chain, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, and draw through 2. So this is what my work looks like so far. If you can see here at the top of the stitches, see how it kind of looks like V's at the top of the stitches? And I have my very first V marked here. So that way I know that when I come back down on my next row, that will be my last stitch I'm going to work into. Okay, I'm going to pause here and kind of let you guys catch up a little bit and see if you have any questions. This is the time to write any questions in the chat, and I can try and answer some for you. See how we're doing. because we're going to do another row of single crochets going back on here. But now I'm going to show you how to go through both of those loops. Okay, so you're going to go through both of those loops. Or if you think about it, if this is the V, we're going to go underneath this loop and that loop. So we're going to go underneath the V with our hook to grab our yarn and pull up a loop is what we're going to do. Looks like you guys are doing really well out there. I know it gets really awkward, you guys. I remember when I first learned to crochet, it was so awkward. And I just want to remind you that as long as you are practicing, this will become easier. I promise it will become easier. Okay. It takes time for your eyes to tell your brain, to tell your hands what to do, and for them all to get in rhythm and talk to each other. Okay. And it's all right if you still need to work on your slip knot. If you just do chains for a while before you go into a single crochet, that's absolutely okay. It's okay. All right, you guys are doing really well out there. I promise you, and I love that you guys are giving yourself grace. Your pinky promise is holding true. Okay, if we're down here to the end of this row and we're going to turn our work and work back, what is the first thing that we're going to do down here? It doesn't have to be like the first thing before you turn. You can do this right after you turn or right before you turn. And it's okay if you don't know. We need to create our stair step, okay? Now the pattern will tell you exactly how many stair steps you're going to do. They're going to call them chains. They call them turning chains. They'll tell you how many turning chains to do. For a single crochet, it's typically just one chain. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to create one chain down here. So we've single crocheted our 10, and then we're going to do one chain, and that's going to be our turning chain. So just like you did at the very start, we're here just like at the very start, yarn over your hook, pull through the loop on your hook, you created one chain. That's all that is. Now we're going to turn our work. All that literally means here, guys, I'm going to hold it down here so you can see. We're going to move this end over here. So we just plop, just like you're turning the page of a book. Okay? It can get confusing here at the start because there's just a little bit of a nothing. So it's like you put your work down. If this was the binding of your book, you're turning the page of the book, and we're going to start working back this way. Okay? All right. So we've turned our page. We're going to start working back this way. And this time, like I said, we will end up putting our hook underneath both of those loops. So that V right there that's at the top of our stitch, we're going to put our hook underneath both of those. But as we do that and we work our way back, we're going to put our hook underneath the top of each stitch that we've just created. So we are going to do a single crochet into the top of each one of the single crochets we just did. I did not put a little cross over here on top of my stair step, right? On top of my turning chain. It's because that does not count as a stitch. So my turning chain here does not count as a stitch. ST is a stitch. All right. So my turning chain, that's what this is. This here is a TCH. It's called a turning chain, and it does not count as a stitch. So we will not put a stitch into it. Luckily, we've already put a stitch marker in the top of our stitch right here, so we know where the end of our row is. But this is one of the number one problems beginner crocheters get, is they start off with 10 stitches, then all of a sudden they have 9, and all of a sudden they have 8, all of a sudden they have 7, or they start off with 10, and all of a sudden they have 11, all of a sudden they have 12. It's because they don't really know where the end of their row is. So by marking our very first stitch, knowing that's the end of our row, we are making sure that we aren't ever increasing or decreasing accidentally. Okay. So we've chained one, we've turned. Now we're going to do single crochets into each one of our single crochets over to our marker. So I pick up my work, and here's going to be your first lesson. Okay. So I picked up my work. My loop on my hook doesn't count as a stitch. No, that's right, Amanda. It does not count as a stitch. What about this V I see right here underneath it? Does that count as a stitch? It's kind of a trick question. It doesn't. And you know how I know that? because that V is the chain right there. It's that chain out there. That's our stepping stone, right? Notice we don't have a stitch in there. We have it over here. So as we turn, we do not want to go into that V. We want to go in to the next one over. Can you see that? You guys see what I mean here? And what I mean by going into it, we're simply going to take our hook and literally just put it underneath both of those loops. Put it underneath both of those loops. Now I'm going to tell you right now, the reason I'm having you put it through both of the loops is because the standard crochet stitch is worked underneath both loops. But there are stitches out there where they will tell you to just go through the back loop here or just go through the front loop here. But if a pattern does not tell you to go into one of those, it is understood that you're supposed to go underneath both. Okay? So that's why I'm teaching you to go underneath both. So you put your hook underneath there, and now we just create our single crochet. So you yarn over your hook, pull your hook out from underneath where you just put it in, right? So you pull up a loop, you have your 2 loops on your hook, you yarn over, and you draw through 2. Now we're going to pause here because that's our first one. So I'm going to pause. There's the loop on my hook. Here's the V behind it. So that's the top of the stitch I just created. So I'm going to grab another marker and I'm going to put it right there into that V. So that way I know that's the last stitch of my row. Okay. And now I continue on. So I go to the next stitch over. I can kind of tilt my work up like so, take my hook, go underneath both loops, both of those loops of that stitch, yarn over. Notice I am not, this is a yarn under. If you're going to eventually do like stuffies and stuff, you'll have people with designs who tell you to do a yarn under like this. I do not want you to do that because standard stitch is a yarn over, pull up a loop. So you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, draw through those 2. Into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, draw through 2. Into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. I'm to my last stitch, and I know because there's my marker. So I go into my stitch. That's the V where I have my marker. Yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. I know I'm not going to go anymore, right? Because there's my marker. So I pause here, and I have all of my stitches complete. Okay? Got it? Toya, will the pattern tell you how many rows or is it routinely the same amount? The pattern will tell you how many rows or how much your fabric should measure in the pattern. But if you're asking me, will it tell you how many to chain for your turning chains? A pattern will tell you that information. I'm just telling you what that information means so that way you don't go blindly into it and be like, oh, I'm chaining 3, but what does that mean? It means that for chain 3, that typically means that would count as a double crochet if the pattern tells you it counts as a stitch, or it will just be 3 stitches to get you the same height. Okay. Wanda, you should still have 10 single crochets. And it's okay. If you've lost one, it's all right. Let's just keep going. All right, so I'm at the end of the row here. I'm going to do single crochets on the next row again. So I'm at the end of the row, which means if I'm doing single crochets on the next row, I'm going to chain one, right? So that's my turning chain. And it does not count as a stitch, which means as I'm working back, I will be putting single crochets into each one of these single crochets. Let's get this row of single crochets done, and then I'm going to show you another fun stitch. That way you can jump into something else. All right, so we're going to chain one. You can chain one and turn, or turn and chain one. It does not matter. I prefer to chain one. So I chain one and then I turn. Remember, it's like turning a book page. So I'm just turning. I am not going to work into my chain, right? I'm not working into the chain. I'm going to go into the top of my stitch here, which I didn't move my marker yet because it helps me to see where the top of my stitch is. Because you can see here, that was the stitch I worked into. This is the stitch I created. So I will go into it. I'm underneath both loops, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through two. Again, that V back there, that's the top of my stitch. So that'll be the last stitch of my row. So I move my marker up, I put it into that V, not the loop on my hook, the V right behind it, right there. And then I continue on. Now I'm going to go fast through this one so you guys can see how this can go. And in my head, I am always kind of telling myself, okay, into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through two. It's like I have this little mantra that it just works through and I know exactly what I'm doing. And if you think about it, like I'm going in there, I'm going to grab some yarn, I'm pulling up the yarn. All right, I'm going to finish that stitch. So I'm back to just a loop. Going into the stitch, grabbing some yarn, pulling up a loop, yarning over, draw through two. And I do that all the way to the end. And where do I know the end is? It's where my marker is here, right? So I go into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and I'm all the way to the end. You see that? Okay. All right. Go ahead, finish this row. Finish this row. I know I went through that really fast, but as you finish this, I'm gonna keep talking so that way you guys can keep learning here as we're getting close to the end of time. We have 15 more minutes. I want you to learn how to do a double crochet because a lot of you will want to venture into something called granny squares, and granny squares are made with double crochets and chains. Well, you know how to do chains, right? That's what we started with. That's what we're doing on our turning chains. But now I want to show you how to do a double crochet, which a double crochet is basically double the height of a single crochet. So let's come up here, a double crochet. It's usually abbreviated as a DC. Let me move this down, DC. And if you're looking at symbols, a double crochet looks like a capital T with a line through it. And that line is going to be important. I'm going to tell you why here in a minute. But that symbol there, the capital T with the line through it, that represents a double crochet. A double crochet is typically made with either two turning chains, oh, excuse me, or three turning chains. All right. So it's either two or three TCH. All right. It all depends on what the pattern designer wants it to be. But this is important for you to know because out here, we're going to make those chains and make it so that we have the right height. What I'm going to do is over here, I'm going to have it be two chains and I'm not going to have it count as a stitch. But when we get over here, I'm going to have it be three chains and I'm going to have it count as a stitch. That way you can see what it means. All right. So we're over here, we're to the end of this row. We know our next row is going to be double crochets. I just told you I'm going to use two turning chains for my double crochet. And then I am not going to count that as a stitch. So I'm going to put my very first double crochet into the top of that single crochet. And I'm going to do that all the way down. Okay. So I'm going to put these double crochets in the top of each of my single crochets. Same deal applies. I'm still going to go through the V at the top of the stitch, but the number of times we go through, pull through 2 is going to be double. All right. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here. So we have 10 double crochets because we're going to put them on top of the 10 single crochets we've done. But we're going to start off with our chain 2. So I'm here to the end of the row. You can turn and chain 2 or chain 2 and turn, doesn't matter. So I'm going to chain 1. So I yarn over, pull through my loop on my hook once, yarn over, pull from my loop twice, right? So that's my chain 2. Turn my book. And now, looking at here, I'm going to put my double crochet into my single. Well, I already know because I left my marker here, right? That was my last stitch right here that I did. But if I did not have my marker, remember, you do not count the loop on your hook. And we did 2 chains. So that was 1 chain. That was the second chain. We are not going to put a stitch into either one of those. So we, by automatic process of elimination, that's the word, we know we're going to put our stitch down here into this third one. Does that make sense? Okay. This V right here is the top of this stitch. So here's how we do a double crochet. You ready? We're going to yarn over our hook to start. Yarn over our hook to start. So now it looks like we have 2 loops on our hook. Now we're going to go into that stitch. Yarn over our hook again and pull up a loop. So you have 3 loops on your hook. We're going to now yarn over and draw through 2 of those loops, only 2 of them. So you're left with 2 loops. You yarn over and you draw through 2 loops again. And you've just completed a double crochet. That V right there behind it, that's the top of the stitch. Remember, because I told you we're not going to count these chain 2s as a stitch. So I'm going to put my marker in the V. That is, oops, get that in there. That's the V right behind the loop on my hooks. That was the top of my double crochet. And now I'm ready to go on. So here's how you create a double crochet. Yarn over your hook to start. I usually will hold these in place. I like to have them like be the same size as my hook. Then I go into my stitch. Yarn over your hook, just like you were doing before. Pull up a loop, just like you were doing before. But now we have 3 loops on our hook, and we're going to work them off. So we yarn over and draw through 2. So yarn over, draw through 2 of those loops. So you have 2 left. Yarn over and draw through the remaining 2. And that's a double crochet. Yarn over your hook, go into the stitch, yarn over your hook, pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over your hook, draw through 2, yarn over your hook, draw through 2. Now, I told you that that little slash mark right here was going to mean something. As you're looking at symbols and you see a slash mark on anything that looks like a big T, that is a clue to you that that's how many times you will yarn over your hook before you start. We have 1 slash mark, so we are going to yarn over our hook once. Okay? If we had 2 slash marks, we'd yarn over our hook twice. If we had 3, we'd yarn over our hook 3 times. Then you would create the stitches just like you did before. You go in, pull up a loop. We would have 5 loops on here. You'd yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. It's always yarn over, draw through 2, unless you're doing some specialty stitch. Okay, so that hash mark there, like I said, as you're looking at symbol, I have a fly in here. As you're looking at symbols and you see a hash mark underneath the big T, that little line, that's your clue that you're going to yarn over your hook once. So we're going to yarn over our hook once. And now we're going to go and complete our stitch. So go into your stitch, yarn over your hook, and pull up a loop. We have 3 loops on our hook. We're going to work them off in by 2s, all right? So we yarn over and draw through 2, yarn over and draw through 2. Guys see that? Okay. Yarn over your hook, go into the stitch, row, that's funny. Yarn over your hook, pull up a loop, so you have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over your hook, draw through 2, yarn over your hook, and draw through 2. It's at this point I need to give myself some more yarn, so I'm going to pull some yarn out. And we're going to keep going. Yarn over my hook, go into the stitch, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, go into the stitch, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, go into the stitch, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, draw through 2. To my last stitch, so I yarn over my hook, go into the stitch, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, draw through 2. Okay? Now, it might look funny down here because we have this down here. You're like, wait, does that count as a stitch? No, because those are your turning chains. And if we're looking at our chart here, we did not count those as a stitch. We didn't put any stitch in them. We didn't do anything. Okay? So those don't count as a stitch. That's why we marked this one. Now, when that changes is when the chains count as a stitch. This is what it's going to look like, and I want you to know what it looks like. So we're going to do a chain 3 for our turning chain, and this time it is going to count as a stitch. So instead of my chain 3s going out here like outside of my swatch, right? I'm going to put my chain 3s in my chart essentially right on top of the very last double crochet. And that's a clue to you to know that those chain 3s are counting as a stitch. So our very first stitch we do on this next row of double crochets will not be in that one. It'll actually be over here. And that also means that we will be putting a marker in that one because that stitch, that last chain, is the end of our row. So we would not want to mark this one, otherwise we would come up short. We'd want to mark that last chain there because we are counting this as a stitch. Now, you might think, Marlena, what are you doing? Why are you telling me all this? It's because as you come to new patterns, you guys, whether it's beginner or advanced, the pattern will tell you whether your turning chains will count as a stitch or not. And I want you to understand what that means, okay? Because I want you to leave this and be confident to go try some brand new patterns. I have a lot of patterns on my own website. Yardspirations has a lot of wonderful beginner patterns. I have beginner patterns on my YouTube channel. There's a lot out there. And any beginner, any pattern will tell you what the beginning chains, if they count as a stitch or not. So I want you to understand what that means. So right here, this chain 3 is going to count as a stitch, which means that third chain, we're going to put our marker into that chain because as we create all of these double crochets working across, they are just, stitches in the row. They are not counting as a stitch, right? Just like we're not putting another double crochet down here because this does not count as a stitch. Does that make sense? Now I'm going to show you what this means. What does this mean to you? Okay. So we're going to chain 3. So 1, 2, and 3. I can pause right here and automatically move my marker. I chained 3, the V behind the loop on my hook, that's my third chain. I'm going to put my marker in it. Okay? Cuz that's right there. That's right there what I told you. I'm going to turn my book. Turn my book. Now, before we were putting our very first stitch right here, right? In the very last stitch that we did, we were putting it there. But now this chain 3 represents the stitch that would be there. So you are not going to put your double crochet right there. You're going to skip it essentially and put it over here. And that is important because this is how a lot of beginners and advanced beginners make mistakes is they know that this counts as a stitch, this turning chain, but then they'll start with their first stitch right here. And now they have too many stitches. So it's important you understand that this chain 3, when it counts as a stitch, it represents the stitch that would be in that first one. So you want to make your first stitch over here. So if we're doing a double crochet over there, we yarn over our hook, put our hook into the top of that stitch, yarn over, pull up, and then complete with our yarn over, draw through 2s. This might feel like it's over your head right now, but I promise as you come back and watch this, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Can you see here how this looks like it's on top of that one? Okay. And now you just follow down the row. So we just work our double crochets all the way down the row. And then on our row back, I'm just going to keep going here. Okay, guys. So that way you guys can see this and it's in the video for you to have because we're almost to the end. But I want you to have this information. Get some more yarn. Pull that through. I'm going to get all the way to the end. On this side, over here, I'm going to keep where it's the chain 2 and it doesn't count. Typically a pattern would not do that, but I want to do that for you guys. So I'm going to end down here on the actual stitch. And then I'm going to chain 2. So 1 and 2. So if we're looking at this, I'm just doing a chain 2 and it's going to come out there. And then I'm going to do double crochets all the way back. And I'll put my last one right there into that marked stitch. All right, so I chain 2, turn my book. For this one, because that chain 2 does not count as a stitch, I'm putting it in my very first stitch. And I will work my double. So I'm going like the wind here, guys. So double crochet is all the same. Yarn over, go into the stitch, and you just work them off by 2s. But this is where you're going to see that we're going to put a stitch into that chain, not into the space. We're going to go into actual chain, which you might be like, Marley, I don't know how to do that. Yes, you do. You did that at the very start. You worked into chains at the very start of this class. So you know exactly how to do it. If I can get my yarn here, of course, it's like stuck. So here's my marker. So I yarn over. I am not going to go into this space, right? Because then I'll get a big old hole. I'm literally going to go into my chain. So I could go right into the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. And I'm back to 10. Okay. Does that make sense? It might not make sense right now, but when you come back and watch this later, that's going to make sense. But now you guys, you know how to do single crochets. You know how to do turning chains. You know how to work turning chains that are not part of the stitch count. You know how to work turning chains that are part of the stitch count. You know how to do singles. You know how to do doubles. You know how to do chains. You know how to read charts. This right here is going to be the most valuable thing to you because now you can visually see what's going on and you can pick up charts like this is a Japanese stitch dictionary. There are symbols in here. You actually know what these are. You see those ovals? Those are chains. You see those little crosses? Those are single crochets. So technically, you could read this because you know what those symbols mean. So that is a huge bonus to this. So the only thing left, y'all, the only thing left for you is for your eyes and your brain to start talking to your hands. And that literally just comes with practice. Okay. And it's okay if you could just do it 5 or 10 minutes a day. Give yourself just a little bit of time just to try and get comfortable holding your hook, get comfortable holding your yarn, and everything else will happen because you are intelligent, you are smart, you understand what I'm telling you to do. Now we've just got to create those neural pathways. And I promise you, if you want to crochet and you practice at it, you will be able to do that. I promise you, I promise you. I saw somebody ask, what's my YouTube channel? It's the Marley Bird YouTube channel. So if you just youtube.com, Marley Bird, there's no E in Marley. But then I have a lot of videos that are on yarnspirations.com. My own website is marleybird.com. And then of course you can check out all of the videos at the Michael's YouTube channel, the yarn, the hook, everything you need to know is right there. But just remember, give yourself some grace, be patient with yourself. I promise you, you will get this and you will be so successful. And when you are, if you're on social media, be sure to share with me, be like, hey, Marley, I took your Michael's class. Look at this dishcloth that I made. Like I will be so ecstatic for you. And I'll be like, way to go. That is just amazing. All right. So make sure you tag me on Instagram. I'm the Marley Bird. Like, what's my name? I'm the Marley Bird. But then you can also do hashtag Yarnspo for Yarnspirations or hashtag Make It with Michaels. Like there's so many ways to get a hold of us, but I know you guys can do this. I know it can seem very frustrating here at the start, but be patient with yourself. You got it. All right, back to you guys.
Amazing. All right. Thank you everyone so much for joining us for today. I am so excited to see what all of you come up with.
Yeah.
Don't forget it is I Love Yarn Week. I hope if you did not love yarn already, that the seed has been planted for you and you are going to be a big fan like us. And stitch
Yes.
markers. We're fans of
Yes.
those.
Stitch
Uh,
markers are big, and I'm teaching a class tomorrow too on granny squares. You guys know the stitches. Come
yeah.
come learn with me. Come learn with
Even if you
me.
just watch. But yes, please join us and join Michaels throughout I Love Yarn Week to learn all kinds of exciting things. Do not forget to share your work with hashtag Make It With Michaels and hashtag Yarnspo. That's YARNSPO, and tag Marley. You can find all kinds of beginner resources on our website, on Marley's website, on Michael's, on everywhere. And just a reminder, you can find more classes on michaels.com, and the recording of today's class at the YouTube channel should be up
Yeah.
in 24 to 48 hours. And
I'm
that's it
proud
for
of you
me.
guys. Way to go, Miriam and Latanya and Amanda and Deborah and Toya and Kathy and Elizabeth and Kelly and Kira. Oh my gosh, there's so many of you. I'm so happy for you. Good
Proud
luck,
of
you
you guys.
guys. Good luck.
Okay, bye.
Bye.